Why is the first thing that comes to mind a frog?
I think a cat because he is tidy and clean and orderly.
He would be a raccoon, and he knows why.
We all know what animal that would be.
And, you know, some things that happen at SOAR stay at SOAR.
Has anybody else thought maybe he should be an owl? Because he's wise. He kind of looks at the big picture, and yeah, he's thinking all the time, and once in a while he says, hoo hoo.
Okay, first of all, I don't think you can make Mr. Stewart one animal. He's a combination of many. I would see him as being an owl because he's the wise one that we all turn to. He's kind of like a fox in that he's pretty clever. He's also just a little bit sneaky sometimes, his secret stashes, those kinds of things. He's like the penguin, the father penguin, who watches not out only for his own children, but watches out for everybody else's. He's the lion, the king of thieves, the king of the jungle of middle school. He's like the bee. When he teaches the kids about mutualism and how they benefit each other. He's kind of the bee, and maybe we're his flowers, and we benefit from him, and he takes everything that he gets from everyone else and shares that around. He's the cat because he's so curious. He's also probably most of all, I think he's like a dog because he's probably the most loyal and true friend that you could ever have. He's always there for you no matter what or who needs him.
A cheetah, one of the world's best animals. It strives for excellence in everything it does.
Mr. Stewart would be a black lab because they are very loyal, but if you give him a little room to run, he's going to go on an adventure, but he'll always find his way back home.
You know, I think he's got to be a chameleon. Not because he can change colors, but that would be pretty cool. Mike, have you ever thought about a nice pink shade for you or something? But no, I digress. I think chameleon because you change and you adapt and you can just do everything that is humanly possible.
A female kangaroo, because he allows his students to explore and do things, but I think he's kind of that motherly role where he kind of helps students along when they need that special protection.
I thought maybe he should be a dog, but can't just be an old mutt. You know, he's got to be one of those companion dogs because he's always kind and caring and compassionate.
Well, he loves birds, and in fact, he collects birds on all his trips. He collects some kind of unique bird. So I would say an eagle.
Intelligent.
A friend.
He's dedicated.
I think of Mike Stewart, I think of rapport. He has such a good rapport with the staff, administration, and the students. I remember several years ago when my son Daniel came home from 7th grade science class and they were doing something with eggs. And he said, "Mom, Mr. Stewart tossed me this egg. I had to dive and I went on the floor trying to catch it. And the minute it hit my hand, I realized it was rubber." And I look up at Mr. Stewart and he's sitting there laughing and saying, "I love my job."
Well, I can't come up with one. I have to use two. I would say thorough and thoughtful. And those two go together so well. He is a planner. He is so thorough, make sure everything is done right. The I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. And he's so thoughtful for so many other people.
Indescribable.
Friendly.
One word would be leader. He is our 7th grade team leader. And I don't think that outside, even staff members in our school realize how much he led our team. All the decisions he made, he was our go-to guy whenever we had like a situation that we weren't quite sure about.
Compassionate. Mike was one to always put others ahead of himself. Students, his peers. That's just the kind of guy he was.
I said, as a person, I'd say honorable. As a teacher, I'd say fair. Mike is so fair with kids. I mean, just so fair.
I would have to say Huskers because Mr. Stewart is the Husker guru. I'm really going to miss talking women's Husker sports with him.
Humble. Mr. Stewart's very humble.
Irish. Is trustworthy. I mean, I can count on him, and he is there for me, and always has been. And He was one of the first people I met in my 34 years here. He came up and talked to me and said, "Hey, I'm Mike Stewart," and I thought, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm Mike Stewart. Yeah, all right. Oh, I went to Dana. Oh, you went to Dana. That's a good thing."
I thought of meticulous, dependable, reliable.
He's always on. He's always consistent.
I'm gonna say faithful. You know, Mike is just one of those individuals that you know, you can tell he genuinely cares about, you know, everyone that he works with, whether it be the students or his fellow colleagues or whatever. And so, you know, one thing you kind of take away from him is just, to me, is that word faithful, because he's always going to do whatever he can for his students, and he's always going to do whatever he can for his colleagues. So, faithful.
I've said this before, but just so very, very caring. Very helpful.
Scheduler. He is a master at scheduling all of our field trip times and bell schedules and student-led conference schedules. We don't know what we're going to do without that.
That we can tell on camera?
Yeah.
The memory that sticks out to me most about Mr. Stewart is probably his finale at the Greek Olympics. Him standing there, them giving the award, and all that he wants to do is flash the thieves, the King of Thieves shield is what he did when he received the award, and showed how much he cared about his particular TNT.
Always used to host his parties at his house, and now we have him out at his place in Phillips, and I just love that, you know, just very welcoming and always hosting them.
I think it has to be the frog dissection lab, because not only do we have a lot of visitors that day who come in to help, which is awesome, but also it has a special smell in the hallway throughout that time.
He would always be at basketball games, volleyball games, and I was always running concessions. So if there was ever a time, and there were a number of those, where I was overwhelmed in the concession stand, Mike would always chip in and help bail me out.
I just have a ton of coaching memories, just good times coaching together.
Mike has a cabinet that has a lot of food in it in his room, and it's right behind his desk, and I would go in there a lot of times because I was hungry, and I apologize, Mike, but I really probably stayed longer than I probably should have most times. We would talk for 30 minutes, and an entire plan period would probably be wasted, but it really wasn't, because I love those conversations. I'm going to miss having him right across the hallway every single day to talk with.
When he blew all the hair off my arm with a hydrogen balloon.
You know, as a serious thing, I really think that I enjoyed watching him dress up as different characters that he portrays and brings people back to life. And I can understand the POP stuff. You just have a blast at doing stuff like that. But probably the most recent memory, I think, is, and you know what this is, Black Shirt Wednesdays. Enough said.
He's always looking after all of us when it comes to group things. So it might not even be science related, but he might find an article that's social studies related or math related. He's always willing to help us out and just share his expertise with us, and just always being that group and team player.
My favorite memory of Mr. Stewart from this school year is when we were in a parent meeting and he asked her about heart disease medication. I'll just stop with that.
I think one of my favorite memories with Mr. Stewart is just the time that I had during our PLC or when the science department would get together. He was a great person to go and talk with and ask advice.
It also was the same moment that I knew Mr. Stewart was probably going to retire this year. I remember it being SLC day here at the middle school, and we were like on a break in between the different parts of conferences, and we're sitting and we saw Mr. Stewart zoom by on the carpet Zamboni like cleaning machine, and we looked in the hallway and we just saw him driving by, and later we found out that he the keys were still in it, and he thought, why not? And so I don't know if I was supposed to let that one out, Mr. Stewart, but yeah, that was a pretty fun memory.
When I think about Mike, I think about how much he cared about his students, and if he was hurting for a kid, you could always see it in his eyes.
You know, I think my favorite memory of Mike has to be his after-school cookouts and watching him go pyromaniac on peeps and other sort of things over the fire in his fire pit in his backyard. So I think that's probably one of my favorite memories with Mike, is watching him flambe peeps.
There are just too many. You know, this is our 25th year, and there is one that is, like I said, some things just have to stay at SOAR. But I always think of it, he always has the best t-shirts, the best biology t-shirts.
It's not one memory, it's just that he always has neat t-shirts.
And he is as much into the art stuff as the biology stuff. He is kind of like a kid himself when it comes to the art things. He always likes to try them. Like he made this amazing ceramic fish one summer.
How he always wore the nice bow ties, he looked nice, and he always brought the Irish bread on St. Patty's Day.
Took a few years before I ever had the courage to go in and do the frog dissection, and I was there standing watching the kids, and I thought, boy, I'm really going to do this, and they're just getting ready to cut the frog skin, and all of a sudden in the back behind me, Mr. Stewart is standing there with a stuffed frog and croaks in my ear. Probably jumped about 10 feet. I turned around, I screamed, you know, and he's kind of looking like, ooh, that's a little more than I expected.
It'd have to be an old song. Sorry. It's a Wonderful Life.
I'd say the theme song for the Kansas City Royals. I don't know what it is, but that'd be his theme song.
Getting jiggy with it.
Life in the Fast Lane.
I was trying to think of a song that included spiders and skeletons and frogs and birds and more spiders, but I couldn't, you know, the little green frog song. Yeah, the itsy bitsy spider, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, you know, but I can't find a song that incorporates all the enthusiasm he had in his classroom.
A Billy Swan song from the 70s called I Can Help. And that was Mike to a fault. I mean, he would do whatever he could to help you out.
We Built This City by Jefferson Airplane. I chose that song because Mike really has left one of the strongest legacies I think possible as a teacher. And it's just gonna be remarkable to see how long his legacy impacts the community of Aurora.
The only thing, and it's just really stupid, was Jeremiah was a bullfrog. It ends up, you know, joy to the world. So
I would say leaving on a jet plane, because Mike loves to travel, and he and Diana have done some fantastic trips.
The Nebraska Fight song, because he's such a true Husker fan, and now he's going to get to go to tons of games.
I think the song that best describes Mr. Stewart would be Fishing in the Dark by Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, because I just think of him as being like a super outdoorsy guy, and all of his involvement with SOAR. Definitely Fishing in the Dark by Nitty Gritty Dirt Band.
Help! I need somebody's help. Well, now see, he doesn't need any help. You, Mike, you don't need any help. But you know, if somebody needs help, you're there, and that is fantastic. So I'm going to say Help by the Beatles.
Professional frog dissector, you know, probably the world's greatest scientist, I would say.
Park ranger or a parks department guy.
The train conductor at the Henry Dorley Zoo, so he could drive around all the kids and their parents and teach them about the animals around the zoo.
He would be a tree hugger, and the reason is because he's always out educating people, trying to save animals, unless it is deer hunting season.
I think he'd be a pharmacist because he would enjoy organizing those medicines.
Slam dunk, deer hunter, down. I mean, you know, those people, Duck Dynasty, they don't have anything on you. Deer hunter, slam dunk.
We went on a trip up to his home place before, and saw he's got quite a lot of farm boy and hunter in him.
A comic strip editor, or even possibly a daily calendar person. And the reason I say that is because he'd always bring in these comic strips to me in the morning, and they're always like math related, math jokes. And the sad part is, like, half the time I didn't get the jokes. So I kind of awkwardly laugh, But then secretly I'd Google what the joke was about once he left, and then later I'd kind of reference it again, like I knew it was what it was about in the first place. But thanks for doing that, Mike. It was always a great way to start my day.
He'd be a farmer.
That's the same thing I thought of. Yep.
Be a biologist.
I think he'd be a biologist, but I also think it would have to be something to do with students, with kids, or with people who are learning about biology.
As a zoologist, studying animals, you know, he could be on a bike ride, and if he would drive by a roadkill that he didn't have in his collection, he'd maybe not throw it in his bike bag, but he'd come back later and pick that up, take it home, and eventually add that skull to his collection. Or if he were driving down the road and, hey, look, there's a dead fox by the side of the road, he'd make a point of picking that up and add that to his collection as well.
Most likely would be a chicken farmer.
Well, if Bill Nye wasn't taken, I think Mike Stewart, science guy, would be a great profession for him, because he could take Bill Nye any day.
I thought of air traffic controller because he can make quick decisions and modify plans just like that and keep everybody calm.
I think he would be like like Bear Grylls, like out in nature and like living off the land and like being a tour guide for celebrities that don't know how to do it. I think Mr. Stewart would be like have his own TV show like Bear Grylls.
Be a state park ranger that works with different forms of wildlife.
He needs to be a teacher. He could be a farmer, he could be a professor, he could be a scientist, he could be lots of things, but he needs to be a teacher.
I think he'd be Superman because he could fly around and save everything that he needed to save, animals or trees. He could get there faster, whatever.
Quail Man, you know, like when we were little and we used to watch, was it Doug?
Yeah.
He could be Quail Man because he does that unit where the kids have to do the bird things.
The Riddler, because he likes little jokes and things, and I think he pulls a lot of pranks.
The Flash. You know, I picture Mr. Stewart as the Thing from Fantastic Four. You know, he's kind of ugly on the out. No, wait. That's not what I want to say. Let me check my notes again. No. He's rock solid. He's rock solid. The Thing is rock solid. Mr. Stewart is rock solid. He's one of the best people I know, and I thank him for his friendship. And wow, wish you the best. Wish you the best.
I think Mr. Stewart is Superman.
I think the superhero Mr. Stewart most would resemble be Superman, because he has his natural powers. He's the man of steel. He's the man of science.
We didn't have any trouble with that one. You know, for Sword, have to be Batman or Spider-Man because we've done them both.
Chuck Norris. Mike and Chuck Norris are very similar. You know, Mike went on a trip recently to France, and he went out for a leisurely bike ride, just for, you know, a morning stroll, and he accidentally won the Tour de France. So, I mean, you know, Chuck Norris, Mike, I would say, you know, all those Chuck Norris jokes, probably you could substitute Mike Stewart in there and be pretty accurate, so.
Hard to put him into one. Let's call him Superman.
I'm going to go with the Hulk. You know, that Mike has a warm and fuzzy side to him, but you don't want to make him angry.
You know, this is one that I struggle with because, like I said, as I think of Mike, just kind of school-wise, it's kind of that pyromaniac side of him that you don't really see because he's kind of that quiet, assuming, almost Clark Kent type of individual. So I was trying to figure what superheroes are there out there that have anything to do with fire, and the only one I could really think of or find was Ghost Rider. And I don't know if Mike is really a leather kind of guy, you know, or has chains or those types of things, or has a Harley at home. But, you know, I mean, hey, if there's something that can be, you know, roasted or fried or cooked or whatever over an open flame, Mike's the guy to do it. So
it has to be Captain America, because he is such a lover of his nation, of his country, and somebody who wants to defend it, and I think that's awesome.
Mr. Stewart would be Aquaman, because he knows the the sea animals very well. I don't know.
All right. You guys have anything else you want to add? While we're rolling the camera, anything you want to say to Mr. Stewart?
Just don't retire from us, please.